love a good conference? Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Helen. I am the Director of Labour Women's Network, and we have spent this year training more women than ever before, holding more events than ever before, and rattling more cages so that we achieve equal representation, safety, visibility and power in the Labour Party for citizens of all shades of red. The reason tonight that I am standing incredibly rudely directly in front of an illustrious lineup of fabulous feminist sisters is because we are walking the talk tonight, and we are broadcasting this event live to our Facebook following. So hello to everybody who is watching us virtually. You are as welcome as those in the room. For that reason, if people could try to keep background noise to a minimum so people at home can hear, that would be super welcome. Thank you. If you are watching on the Facebook page, you can type questions in the comments that we will throw to our guest speakers later on. If you are not watching on the Facebook page, you can put out your questions and stand up and take your space a little bit later on. But whether you are here in person or here in spirit, please can I ask that we treat each other in a sisterly and comradely fashion and make sure that everybody has a wonderful evening, free from microaggressions, or as somebody else mentioned in conference, macro-aggressions. We would not be able to do events like this at Labour Party conference, especially as it is, if it wasn't for the incredibly generous support of our friends in the business sector, and specifically our now well-established relationship with the Association of British Insurers. And I'm really, really delighted to welcome Lauren from the ABI to say a few words. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're delighted to be sponsoring this Labour Women's Network In Conversation event again, especially as we're looking forward to general election year next year. It's really important the work that the Labour Women's Network carries out. It was very, very close to functioning again. The ABI, for those of you that don't know, represents the world-leading insurance and long-term savings industry, and we employ over 250,000 people across the UK. We are doing a lot to increase diversity, and we're working with our members to increase gender parity in the sector as well. We were proud to launch the new diversity exhibition and equity and inclusion blueprint last November, and like some other folks, we also have a mission of making the insurance for long-term savings sector the most diverse, equitable and inclusive sector of the UK economy. We will continue to renew and refresh this blueprint each year with the help not just of our members, but also hopefully with many of you in this room as well. So thank you for the opportunity to say some words. I appreciate it, and I'm delighted to hand over to our wonderful chair, Abena, Oppong-Asare, who was recently been appointed as Shadow Minister for Women's Health and Mental Health, and I'm pleased to Good evening, sisters. Conference is now drawing to a close, and I hope you all had a really good conference. I don't know about you, but I felt that the vibe has been really positive. I've been really proud to see LWN sisters smashing it on the stage continuously, and we are really taking over the Labour Party in a good way. As I said the other night, for those of you that weren't there, we do have the Joe Cox programme, which is reopened, so please encourage people to apply for the programme. And I hope you feel that we're still invigorated from being at the Labour Party conference. I hope you made some new friends, new connections, and have ideas about how we can make sure that we as a Labour Party can get into government with women playing a key role. As you know, we're constantly throwing training courses, but we also do need the support of you as well to amplify the sisterhood, the work that we are doing, but also to try and encourage people to also play a role in becoming members, or also contributing to the Labour Party, because that helps us to make sure that we can continue doing the great work that we do. So thank you again for your support. Make sure you're on social media, particularly this evening, and on other days, just amplifying the work that local news network do. So enjoy the rest of this evening.
Thank you so much, Abena. And if you do want to tweet about the fun that you are having tonight, or the inspiring, no pressure, that our panel are about to say, you can do so with the hashtag Lab23 and hashtag LWN In Conversation. Now, speakers, you'll be pleased to hear that you do not have to stand up, because it's been a long conference, and in fact, I think it's been about 3 years long. Earlier I accidentally tweeted about this event with the hashtag Lab24. By the final night of conference, it does slightly feel like we have been here for an indefinite expense of time. We've got some amazing speakers tonight. As you can see, we have Aletha Chair, Anneliese Dodds. We have one of our first fabulous journalists, we have Attorney General Emily Thornberry. We have guiding our conversation tonight, and it will be an informal, relaxed conversation. This is the last of the stand-up speeches, the wonderful guest interviewer, political correspondent from The Guardian, Aletha Adu. And we have a feminist by people as well as by full-time occupation, Helen Pankhurst CBE. And of course, we've already met not just LWN Chair, but now Shadow Minister for Women's Health and Mental Health, Oppong-Asare. So I'm going to hand over to Aletha now, who I think is going to ask for a couple of introductory remarks from the speakers, but then we're going to let her take the reins and grill them without restriction. So, Aletha, thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you all for joining us to an incredible conference so far. I think it's a lovely way to end things in a really positive fashion in this evening. I'm going to ask all of the panelists here if you can describe your colours in maybe 3 words. Helen. Let's start easy. And tell us how that shapes your politics. And I'm just going to think you might be working away quite soon.
Well, thank you. I suppose my childhood was very different to my life now. I was brought up in rural Abena. There were more peaceful people. I didn't have a kind of particularly political background at all. I suppose my parents were both very committed to, I suppose, what I would call social justice, although they wouldn't necessarily use that phrase. That my family were small business people effectively, so my dad was a small businessman, my mum was a housewife, so I've been a nurse and a housewife, and I suppose that kind of background doesn't often necessarily lead to people having Labour politics, but actually for me it was quite a sensible direction. My first job was as a kitchen porter, sorry for those people who've heard the story before, where I was paid £2 an hour. Now I was doing that at Hot School, so it didn't matter so much to me, but there were lots of other people there who were really not earning very much at all. Also worked on a grade store, like a collection of farms working together, and the women that I met there actually, again, low income tenant farmers, a lot of kind of structural inequality there, and so it did inspire me to get politically active, but not necessarily for a traditional route. Sorry, that wasn't 3 words, was it?
My childhood wasn't as my mother had expected it to be, because my parents were not allowed to study. And as a result, we suddenly had no money, and we got a big piece of our house. And we ended up with a council estate on benefits for several years. I felt I hadn't passed it over to school where we hear people what they do about people doing the rest of their life. We said, actually, we should get people in prison. Is that candidate for the criminal barrister? The guy who says this is a lady councillor, he's got a bit of
relationships and helpful and representing the state of school back home. And to go out on Sundays, knock on doors, and do that as well.
So for the 3 words, it would have to be Ethiopia, France and UK. So I grew up in Ethiopia, and my parents and the whole family, and this comes from Sylvia, from my grandmother, is absolutely obsessed with all things Ethiopia. So very, very important to my background, to ideas around the thing about doing around international development. And then I went to a French school because English school was too far away from where we lived in Abena. And my mother thought that a French education would be enough to know language, which could be useful. And then during the summer, I became in the UK. And the stuff we get I didn't hear about anywhere else. When I came to the UK as a young child, and people would say, "Oh, you've got a famous surname." And I said, "Yeah, my parents have been in Ethiopia for a long time." They said, "No, you've got a famous surname because of, Emily and Sylvia," and I have to learn all about it.
I guess mine is determined because of hard working. My parents were from Ghana, and when they came to the UK, they faced significant barriers, particularly in terms of racial discrimination. So my parents went to get NHS in mental health actually, and my dad retired last year. So they were looking to work long hours to make sure that me and my brothers were funded very well, and they were always make sure that we worked hard. So I grew up in a household where I was always told, as a black person, you have to work hard. So, to be able to make your mark in society. So I guess I grow up with that mentality, and then I see the resilience, particularly from my parents, where the perseverance, particularly when things are getting tough financially.
It's the same thing.
So when we do have interesting journeys, and I think before we sort of look at the challenges of I'd love to know about some of the things that you're most proud of.
I mean, I always feel that whenever anything is achieved in politics, it's actually done with huge effort. And I know that LWN might always say, keep it clear, be clear about what you achieved.
Big difference internationally. And then being a member of Parliament, I suppose at the moment, I mean, it obviously changes over time, but we had our national policy forum process, which our colleagues were absolutely delighted at having to go through a lot of consultations and work, but ultimately what that has produced is our policy programme, which many of you who are delegates will have voted on, and that will be the basis for our manifesto. It will be drawn from that. I chaired that process. Again, it was a team effort, a lot of working together across the movement, but I think it's given us such a strong platform, both for advancing equality, particularly women's equality, but for those missions that we want to make sure that will change our country. And of course for me, I mean, actually they're one and the same thing. So that's definitely one of the things I'm proudest of.
I think I'm probably proudest of being the MP for Islington South and Finsbury, which is my community where I brought up my kids, and I'm really proud to be their voice and their representative, I think, above everything else. I think I'm also proud of the part that I play, and I've always played, I hope, since I was 17 when I joined the Labour Party, and supporting the Labour Party in whatever way I can, because I do believe it's Labour first, Labour last, Labour always. Well, interestingly, and maybe as a contrast to that, what I've tried to do is navigate the cross-party work. And this is partly holding on to the heritage of Emily having shifted so far to the right, and Sylvia, my grandmother, being so far to the left, that I felt that there was power in feminism never being in opposition. And although that's really hard, I think there's a very, very important space in politics to hold that and to make sure it happens. And I'm really proud of my team, to pick up Anneliese on your point. So over there's Liz and Joe from Centenary Action, and they've done fantastic work to try and make that as effective as possible. So, yeah.
So at the moment I'm quite proud I've got free conference. I don't know for anyone else, this has been a really brilliant conference, but it's also been really amazing to meet loads of people, but there's been a lot of things that I've had to do in terms of engagements and get up to speed on my new brief really, really quickly. But also, I'd say coming as a new MP was particularly tough. Wasn't that long before we went into national lockdown. We were also in a situation where there was a leadership contest and a deputy leadership contest. So I think as new MPs, it was a bit of a struggle, and we built a really good bond together, even though we're all from like different political positions. We have that respect ultimately for each other. So I think that's something. But also recently I did a piece of work in Parliament on defibrillators, which was essentially based on a constituent of mine whose dad died and would have survived if there had been a defibrillator in place. And I did a campaign on that in Parliament, Westminster Hall debate, and as a result, Parliament is actually looking at how they can improve access to defibrillators on the parliamentary stage. But also it was also to raise awareness nationally about what the government could be doing differently. So just before my Westminster Hall debate, suddenly the government decided to come up with some policies that they wanted to drop and suddenly went to do some visits. So I think it's the little things really that I say that makes me proud.
Something earlier, Abena, about being of Ghanaian descent, which I am too, and my parents also told me that I would have to work twice as hard to even make any sort of dent in any career path that I wanted to go down. So really grateful to be on this panel with you. You're all incredible women. But I think women in general are sort of held to a different standard in politics, and sometimes we can see that how women are treated by the media, by journalists sometimes. People are focusing on the way that they look instead of what they're saying, and I guess my question to you all would be, how do you navigate that?
I mean, I think that sisterhood really, really helps, I would say. I mean, I've thought about this quite a lot because I was first a parliamentary candidate in 2005, a very long time ago. When I was a young woman, we didn't even really have email. We had this thing called Telnet. That was what we had. The first time I was a candidate, I built my own website using HTML. I mean, that was kind of what it was like back then. So social media now is a completely different planet, let alone world. And I feel like I've had that time to get used to it a bit. Whereas I think for women coming into politics for the first time, sometimes facing some pretty nasty stuff online actually, it's obviously very different. It's suddenly leaping into that path, whereas I could tip my feet into it slowly and get used to it. And there I think the sisterhood is really important. I do think, however, we've got to do more so that it's not just about us getting a much thicker skin, it's actually about stopping, particularly when it gets into misogynistic abuse. Obviously we've set out many things we want to change there around online harms and, misogyny is a hate crime, those kinds of things where I think we do need to see that change actually, because the question that I hear the most from young women is, how do you put up with it? Rather than, how do I start to do this? And, surely it's got to be the other way around, I would say.
Well, I mean, I navigate the difficulties of misogyny by being entirely human and entirely perfect at all times. Because, that's what we need to be, and that's me, so it's just completely ridiculous. These days, politicians are supposed to be human, but we were never supposed to make a mistake ever in any respect. And given the amount of attention that there is on us particularly, and it isn't just our politics, as has been said, it's the way we walk, it's the way we talk, it's the way we look, it's it's how we the whole cash and caboodle. I mean, the only way in which I navigate it, actually, and I have kind of firmly, I mean, apart from this at sisterhood, which is really important, right, and I never want to underestimate that, but I think the way I navigate it is by realising that those that abuse me online don't know me, have never met me. And most of them, frankly, aren't even people. I mean, they're not like these, I mean, it's like, you know, there's this boy in his bedroom with a kind of like series of different, like, you know, identities, and, you know, they're all little kind of egg cups, and, or, you know, whatever. They're not actually people. And if you look, if they don't have a photo of a real person, and, you know, then frankly, I just block them. But I think you need to remember that, you know, they don't know who you are, they've never met you, they would never say that to your face. If someone I knew said that to my face, I would be really upset. But they don't know me, and they haven't said it to my face, and they're just sort of, you know, inadequate little boys in their bedrooms, is kind of how I see it. And I will be damned if I'm going to let them get in the way of my huge enjoyment and satisfaction from being in politics. I am having a ball, and I want 14-year-old girls who are thinking about going into politics to not be put off by it, because they need to know about the positives. And the positives are that you can change the world, and that it is an enormous honour to represent your community, and you should just go for it. And the more they have a go at you, the more you upset them, which, I mean, like, can you imagine how upset they are with me, right? I mean, seriously, like, I'm a woman, I'm old, I'm fat, I'm left-wing, I've got a big mouth. I mean, how much more upset could they be? But I'm not going to shut up. And I'm not going to shut up. That's the point. I'm not going to shut up, and they will not shut me up. Because I've got a lot to say.
I don't get as much of it as MPs do, so I don't really want to say too much, except that I do a lot of talks up and down the country to different age groups, and I see the problem morphing, meaning that I see some girls and women with a lot of confidence and not feeling it's as much of a problem as before, wearing these kind of shoes, wearing trousers, feeling much more comfortable and not needing to feminise themselves if they don't want to, if you see what I mean. And then I also hear some stories of 7-year-old girls who feel the pressure in ways that are just so much worse than it used to be. So it's kind of, it's not a simple thing, this issue of how society sees women and how it focuses on their looks. It's complicated, it's difficult, and it's still there, but morphing.
So I'm just like, haters are going to hate. It's not my fault that I'm black and they've got an issue with that. And also, you know, I regularly get confused with my other black colleagues. You've got to use humour. If I got upset every time someone confused me with one of my black colleagues, I wouldn't get any of my work done. I just literally be depressed. I want to get out of my bed. So I use humour a lot, and actually it does make people think. And I think if you just cancel someone or just get really angry with somebody, you're not really addressing the root of the issue. Other things that I do in terms of coping mechanisms is self-care. So particularly with my non-political friends, I would catch up with them. We just have downtime. You probably see me doing these ridiculous dancing TikTok, Instagram videos, but you know, this rocks my boat, so you know, right back.
I mean, how much progress do you think has been made within the political sphere in terms of misogyny, sexism? I mean, have you had experiences of actually being in a room and people are sort of mistaking you as maybe being an intern, or like talking down to you because of your gender or because of your race too? And yeah, like how far have we come?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that I haven't had that so much. I have had some, I mean, again, related to what Abena said about humour, you know, I've had some situations where I just haven't really understood what was going on. You know, I remember when, many years ago when I was standing to be a candidate, and this gentleman said to me, I don't think we can have you because we had one of you before. And I thought you meant like a Scottish person. I was in England and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you know what he meant. He meant women. Completely flabbergasted. But I mean, I think obviously in some areas, I mean, I related a bit to what was just said about it being mixed. You know, I think clearly in some areas we have undoubtedly moved forward. I mean, the Labour Party's parliamentary representation now has parity with the general population. We've got more women MPs than we have men amongst Labour MPs, which is absolutely terrific. It's brilliant. It's actually a testament to LWN and a number of people in this room, you know, Nancy and others who worked so hard for that. So thank you. We still obviously need to do more. We need to keep pushing. We need to ensure there's always that pipeline. We need to ensure women are supported. When it comes to councillors, we're doing a lot better as the Labour Party than the other parties, but we need to then make sure those women are becoming council leaders. We need to make sure they're becoming metro mayors. We need to make sure they're becoming police and crime commissioners as well, and also particularly that women councillors continue as women councillors and that we don't have the pattern which sometimes exists, which is when women are having children, that they feel they have to stand back from being a councillor. So there is a lot to do. Also around sexism and sexual harassment is something that we've talked about quite a lot before, Aletha, and you know what we need to do. I mean, Labour Party's quite radically changed our processes around this. We've got a new sexual harassment process, we've got an independent complaints process. I wouldn't say that job of work is done. It's never going to be done. We've got to do more. But I think we're in a better place than we were, but we've still got to really be working hard. And I think one of the major issues when it comes to Parliament in particular is you've got a whole mix of different women. They're quite often in junior roles compared to very senior men, and they will be potentially employed by the Labour Party or by an MP or by Parliament or even sometimes by other organisations as well. So the person who might be, the man who might be behaving in an inappropriate way towards them might not be from the same organisation. So we've got to get all of that working better, because a woman's place is in the House of Commons and it is in politics, and we should be supported, not encouraged.
So I've been involved in politics and trying to get selected for Parliament for a long time. You know, sort of, I don't know. I think I probably started going for it in the mid-1990s, and things are certainly different now to the way they were then. I mean, I, for example, and I've told the story before, went for selection in Dagenham and went to see the leader of the council there. And he wrote to me, I mean, I've actually got it, I mean, I've got the letter, and he wrote to me and said, that given that our current MP has not exactly covered herself in glory, it would be impossible, in my opinion, for any woman, let alone the mother of children, to be selected for this seat. And he put it in black and white. Anyway, we hadn't got all women shortlists at that time, but we got all women shortlists fairly soon afterwards. Because we'd had all women shortlists, and then there was the challenge under the legislation, and then after 2001 we went back to having all women shortlists again because of incidents like that. I mean, I went to a selection where it was like you nominated a man and a woman, and you turn up, and then they had to kind of decide like which one they were going to have. And I would always come fourth, you know. I mean, I'd type behind the three men. Whenever they had to choose a man and a woman, I'd always come first. But when it came to like, oh no, we've got to choose one, it's obviously the men. And there was, I went to one and I was like, on my way in, and this old boy comes up to me and he goes, oh, you look nice. I said, oh, thank you. And he says, yeah, you know, you women, you spend all this time on what you look like on the outside, whereas we men just want to know what you look like underneath. So I said to him, you're asking me the colour of my knickers? I mean, there was absolutely no way on earth that guy was ever going to think of me as his MP. I mean, there was no way, you know? And so, yeah, that was 20 plus years ago. It's not as bad as that now. But I do think that we also need to be, and it's great that we have half women in Parliament and half women in the Cabinet. We need to, in all spheres, political spheres, we don't need to just look at the representatives we need to look at the gender of the people who are in the room when the most important decisions are made. We need to be careful about that. Because we can end up being a bit kind of complacent without doing that. But I mean, I wasn't as shocked because I'd spent 20 years as a barrister, and frankly, good politics was even worse.
So today is the 10th of October. The 10th of October 1918 was when the suffragette movement started. 120 years ago to this day. So I thought, since that was the case, how about looking at the manifesto? And I found a few words on their manifesto which substitute representation for votes, because they were focused on the votes and we're now focused on representation. This is what
what about 1866? When suffragists started?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the dates for that, but yes, 50 years before that they were campaigning. But sorry, there we go, got it now. This was in the manifesto. Social reform can never be, and think about it in terms of its relevance today. Social reform can never be satisfactory as long as one half of the nation is not represented. Working men have found that political action is needed to supplement trade unionism, and so they have formed the Labour Party. Women trade unionists and social reformers now realise that the possession of the vote, in our case now the possession of equal representation, is the most effective way of securing better social and industrial conditions, better wages, shorter hours, healthier homes, and an honourable position in the state, which will enable women as well as men to render that citizen service which is necessary to the development of a truly great nation. And I just kind of feel that there's so much that's still relevant, not just because not just because the power of the women vote isn't sufficiently understood. You know, the fact that we have so many floating female voters, and that's because they're thinking, that's because they're looking at what the best policies are. And yet the power of that thoughtful vote, I think, needs to be harnessed more in some ways. And we need equal representation. And without that, we won't get whatever it was that truly whatever nation.
So I think that if things are a lot better because LWN exists, in terms of the spaces and opportunities that women are available for women to get into public office and play a role in the Labour Party. I do think things are a lot better, but I also think we also need to recognise, also particularly if you're in public office, online abuse is maybe a deterrent to people getting involved in public office. It is becoming a bit of a toxic space at times, and so what you're kind of focusing is training the individuals to become resilient, when that shouldn't really be acceptable that this is allowed to happen. I think that I agree with what Emily says, you know, it's great that we have a lot of women in public office, but it's about those spaces and the role that they play, and making sure that they play a key role in our policy making, particularly in the run-up to the general election.
Thinking about how you sort of navigate these difficult spheres, are there women that have, you know, been really inspirational to you and given you some really incredible advice along the way?
Well, obviously the first one was my mum, but the second one was Harriet Holman. I mean, I would not have, and so I am. I mean, the one thing we haven't said, and we have to always say, we have to remind ourselves to always say, is that I don't know what it is about us, but we have to kind of be asked to stand, and then we say no. And then we have to be asked to stand again, and then we have to ask to stand again. And, you know, when there was elections, used to be elections for the Shadow Cabinet, and I was asked by Patricia Scotland and by Harriet Holman a number of times to stand, and I said, no, I'm not up to it, or couldn't possibly, haven't got enough experience, not talented enough, all the bollocks, you know. And eventually, the only reason I agreed to stand for the Shadow Cabinet was because Harriet Harman chased me down the corridor and shouted at me until I agreed. Now, I'm not saying that you should do that necessarily with everybody, but I'm just saying that there are all kinds of people within our movement of different ages and different amounts of experience who we still have the same kind of, oh, I don't want to put myself forward disease. and we just need to acknowledge that and make sure that we, and Harriet is a great one for, you know, she will ask people and ask them again, and she knows what it, and she knows the psychology, and she knows she has to keep pushing, and she is, you know, an inspiration and has always been someone who, you know, there are the things which she does publicly, and then there are all the little kind of things, you know, the kind of the tap on the shoulder, the whisper in the ear, the note, the are you all right, the just the acknowledgement that things are more difficult if you're a woman, and you know, and I think if you have kids, it's also really difficult. So, and she has kids, and she recognises that and has that shared experience, and so, you know, for me, she was, I wouldn't be where I am without Harriet.
It would have to be Sylvia, my grandmother, as a major influence on me because of a number of things. The identification of intersectionalities, before that was the term, in so many ways, discussing issues of working class women's experiences at the time when there was a focus elsewhere. The move to Ethiopia, the understanding of the global inequalities, anti-racism, anti-fascism, you name it, she was involved in all of that. And then maybe above all else, the fact that she didn't didn't stay put. She kept on thinking and developing new ideas and campaigning on new issues. And one of the quotes we're now using at Centenary Action is that the last words in her book on the suffragette movement, where you would have thought she'd just be saying, wasn't it wonderful everything we did? The last sentence is, great is the work that remains to be accomplished.
My mum's an inspiration to me, but as you all know, I'm quite selfish, so I have quite a number of people that inspire me. I'd say also Valerie Amos, who used to be the leader of the House of Lords, first black female leader of the House of Lords, who also grew up in Bexley, which is where I live. So I didn't really see anyone from Bexley in politics. So she inspired me. I got to do work experience, and I saw how inspiration and driven she was. And also, in terms of how I got involved, really, I'd say it was Tessa Jow and Fiona Tricos who took me aside, like Emily, I was stuck in a corner, and they said, have you thought about starting to be a counsellor? And I said no, and Tessa really grilled me as to why I wouldn't do it. Public speaking was my weakness, plus I didn't think there was anyone like me, and she said, well, with the public speaking, that could be worked on, so there's no excuse on that. And actually, quite frankly, if you weren't nervous or about doing public speaking, it would mean that you weren't really in touch and could come across as quite arrogant, so it's good to have that little bit of nervousness. And also I say it's the people around me, the sisters within the PLP, the sisters within the Labour Party, so Nan, Jane, Claire and other people within the Labour Women's Network Executive, they inspire me as well, and you know, they're inspirational to me.
I'd like to just give a shout out to my own boss, Pippa Crerar, who is the and I wouldn't be working in politics without her pushing me into the sphere and giving me that confidence that even though there aren't many lobby journalists that do look like me, there is a place for people like us here, and we are here to serve the public. So again, this is just for Pippa Crerar. We must move on to your briefs. This is just to Abena and Emily. Can you tell us about the current challenges you're facing in your current brief right now?
Sure. I'm the Shadow Attorney General, which means I'm the lawyer to the opposition. And there are a number of things that I have worked on. I'm working with the Justice team and the Home Affairs team on halving violence against women and girls. And that's a big agenda which I can talk about at some length, but given the time I'm not going to, but if you have any questions I'll answer them. but it's obviously important that the Crown Prosecution Service, the prosecuting authorities, the police, the courts, society in general are working, there's work done in all of those spheres in order to really address the epidemic of violence against women and girls and terrible misogyny that we're seeing flourishing in our society. I did today do my speech and I talked about 3 things, and if you don't mind, may I just so there were 3 things that I'm going to be working on in the next few months. The first is, and it is the one that's had the least publicity, but I kind of think that actually for a lot of people this will make a big difference, and that is looking at the legal rights of people who are not married but live together. So this whole kind of common law wife nonsense. People think that they've got rights, they don't have any rights, and if they do have rights, they're really obscure and they've got to get a really expensive lawyer to find them. So we need to look again at that, and there has been work done by the Law Commission, there's been work done by parliamentary committees, the law has changed in Scotland, it's being looked at in Ireland, in New Zealand. I mean, kind of people know what it is that needs to be done. We need to give people who live together the same sort of rights as people who are married. And the government won't agree to it because the government doesn't want to undermine marriage. I mean, as if people are not going to get married. I mean, really. But, the reality is that those who miss out, on what fundamental rights are women and their children. And, I've spoken to people who say, there are too many women who feel that they have to either get married or they have to remain in a relationship because they don't have any rights and they'll be homeless if they don't stay with him. I mean, it's appalling. So I'm doing work on that, and the parties agreed to this, and we're going to, this is going to be part of our offer, which will be fantastic. The second thing is looking at online abuse and stalking, and there are still too many problems in relation to that, and people who particularly have online stalkers, the police seem to be pretty loath to give women the identities and even a picture of what their stalker looks like. So they don't know if they're just being stalked online or if the guy is pitching up as well, they don't know. And that's terrible. And there are some terrible examples. And I'm working with a woman called Nicola Thorpe, who's an actress who's had really suffered some terrible abuse through a stalker. And then the third thing I'm doing is I'm looking at whistleblowing. Whistleblowing in the workplace, where you need to whistleblow because you are being sexually harassed or assaulted, and the whistleblower legislation protects people when they go public on the problems that they're having at work, but it specifically at the moment excludes personal. And we have just recently seen the most amazing, astounding story from women surgeons. Women surgeons, the amount of standing women surgeons have, and the education and support and everything else, and how 2/3 of women surgeons say that they have been sexually abused, and a third of them say that they have actually been sexually assaulted whilst working in surgery. And they haven't reported it, and if they can't report it, what chance for a 16-year-old girl being doing an internship in a television studio, being assaulted by talent. So we need to look at that. So they're the 3 areas of work that I'm looking at, because inherently there are things within our legal system more generally, outside of the criminal sphere, which we talk about a lot, but within what we call civil work, we need to change the civil law as well, to make it more equal for men and women, and those are the 3 areas that I'm working on first.
Well, I'm a few weeks into my role, so I'm now covering women's health and mental health. So at the moment, I had to flip things around for conference, but I'm just really kind of looking at how, where we are at the moment, particularly as a party. I've already had meetings with colleagues of mine, such as Anneliese, Dodds, Rosella, to talk about what work we've been doing so far. So there's already a good offer, particularly when it comes to looking at aspects of women's health, such as menopause. You would have heard Anneliese announce at Women's Conference about our plan to give employees a workforce plan so they can look at women menopause in the workplace. Black maternal health as well is a big thing that we've said we'll look at the Labour Party. But things that I've already been thinking already is in relation to postnatal deaths, where women that have had children, suicide rates are particularly high. So that's something that I'm looking at exploring in terms of what we can do. But also in terms of mental health, we know that's going to be one of our key election issues. And that's something that has been massively neglected by this government, where I know there's concerns particularly about the lack of work being done by the government to reform the Mental Health Act, which is something that we support as a Labour Party in principle, but also looking at seeing how it could be strengthened. And I've looked at what the government's done in terms of the women's health strategy, where nothing really has kind of materialised from it. So I'll be also scrutinising my own position to see where the gaps are. We've got a number of debates coming up in Parliament, which I'll be responding to. But the key to all of this, which is how I very much operate, is I very much want to work with stakeholders, whether they're health professionals, whether they're charities, individual experiences. We need to be listening to them as a party, because if I was to sit down and just say, this is what I'm going to implement, particularly you in my role, I'm not really listening, and I'm coming up with ideas that might not actually benefit the people that really need it. So this is where I am at the moment. We've been flooded as an office with the amount of stakeholder engagements, have very limited resources, so I have to think strategically about what I can do long term and how I work with the rest of the health team and with the wider aspect of the Labour Party.
A wider point about the Labour Party at the moment, for you all to answer actually. How do you think the Labour Party can maintain economic credibility whilst keeping up hope and a message of hope and vision for voters? Emily first.
I'm not saying this isn't hard, because there's an awful lot of problems that we could, if we had it, throw money at. But there isn't the money. But there are things that can be done. And what we've talked about, and we've been honest about it, is we've said that given we've had this government in for 13 years, they've had the country in their hands, they've had all this power, and they've done nothing. They've done nothing. I mean, really, is anybody richer? Are public services any better? Have they put any money into infrastructure? Has there been any major social change? I mean, we've had Brexit, which is controversial. But, otherwise, what have we achieved? And so we have they have been managing, not even necessarily managing, but, the country has been in decline. To turn that round is not something that we can do in a couple of years. And we have to be honest with people about that and be grown up about it. And say that, first of all, we need to make sure that we make sort of decisions, long-term decisions that need to be made and haven't been made and have been ducked for too long. And whether that is, rewiring the country so that we get, electricity going from the right places to the right places, and linking people up on the grid in the way that they need to. I mean, I know that Rishi Sunak managed to get the grid upgraded in his area so that he could heat his swimming pool, but there are more pressing problems than that. And we have a grid which is appropriate for an economy which has, power coming from oil from the North Sea and gas from our major ports, but not from the kind of green power that we need. And we need to completely upend our economy and do, and create power in a completely different way and be doing industrialisation in a completely different way. And we've said that we want to set up a sort of a wealth fund, basically, a national wealth fund. We want to set up GB energy, and we want to start really going for growth. We want to change the planning system, and we want to start building houses and homes for the people who need them, because, again, no one's made any decisions about that. And that sort of growth will take a while, but that growth causes in itself a wealth which can be used for investing in our socials, in our public services in the way that we need to. And you know, the two things are linked together. But there are many other things that can be done as well. And we've been very careful, because we have the highest tax burden that we've ever had for 70 years under this government. So not only have they not achieved anything, but they're also taxing us more than anyone has ever been taxed. And so, you know, we've been talking about, you know, changing our priorities and the way that we spend money in particular ways. But it's hard. But what we can do is we can inspire people by saying to them, big decisions have got to be made, but we have the strength and the confidence to make those decisions. And by making the right sort of decisions, we will be putting our country on the right path and be giving us all hope, because we cannot continue as we are. It doesn't have to be like this. There is another way, there's a Labour way, and we are here to make those big decisions. And our country will
So what I was thinking about, Emily, as you were speaking, is how we seem to quite easily, quite quickly bifurcate between thinking about infrastructure as a solution when we think about economics and think about growth, and then we flip and then we think about social infrastructure when we think about people and we think about values and teachers and nurses and so on. And I don't know how we hold both as the engines, and even then engines is a term which is loaded with traditional ideas about where you put power and change. And I would love us to be able to put both side by side and not flip-flop when we talk about people, talk about care and teaching, or when we talk about economy, talk about infrastructure. I just don't know how we do it, but I think we need to somehow.
Hi, so I completely agree with what Emily says. If I didn't, that would be quite odd, wouldn't it? I also wanted to add is there needs to be, which we already do, is economic discipline. So we can't just sit there and promise the world everything has to be kind of costed. And so obviously I've come from the Treasury team. Every time anyone from other departments had a policy idea, they had to show that it could actually be delivered, that they'd thought about it through, because we've been out of government for 13 years and people have not trusted us on the economy, and it's taken us a long time to get to the place that we are right now, and we can't lose the focus. And we also have to be honest, as Emily said, that we're not going to be able to change things overnight. We are going to have to reverse 13 years of damage that this Conservative government has done, and that is going to take time for us to repair and also make sure that the country is advanced as it should be, because we're so far behind. So I don't have anything else to add other than what Emily said.
One last question. If you could go back 20 years, is there anything that you would do differently in your career?
I wouldn't go back 20 years. I mean, I'm so old, 20 years doesn't make a lot of difference. I'd go back 30 years, really. I would somehow or other have a fourth child, because they are my joy. And I kind of think I had another one that would be even more joyful. I don't know how I would do that along with becoming an MP a bit earlier, because I was 45 when I was elected. So I did. You're a superwoman, so I did 20 years as well, and then 18, I've done 18 years as an MP. So I think if I had started a bit earlier, perhaps that would have been, and I should have been more confident. And what happened to me was that I lived in the East End, and there was going to be an all-women shortlist in Tower Hamlets, and people talk about all-women shortlists as being when the party started taking women seriously. But actually, I'm going to be honest with you, it was when I started taking myself seriously, because I started thinking, well, I wasn't sure I could do it when they were men. But when it was other women, I'd go, I'm as good as them. Now, why couldn't I think that when they were men? I mean, that was me internalising, all the nonsense that we have to put up with. And I should admit that. You know, it was a long time ago, I hope I've got over it, but that's what I would change.
I love my 2 kids. I'm not sure I'd like that. I love them to bits, but yeah. I have a motto which is fun and purpose. And it's taken me a while to get there, to think about that balance between the two. And I think it's a really important one for all of us, and for women in particular, because especially with that kind of political drive of wanting to make a difference and also wanting to look after the kids and all the rest of it. And I think that balance between also remembering the fun bit, maybe would have been good to have learned that one a bit earlier.
I think, in all honesty, I regret some of the clothes choices I made 20 years ago. Some of the hideous eyeshadow and earrings. In those days, it was fluorescent eyeshadow and earrings. I thought it was cool those days, but when I look at the pictures, I have massive trauma. But I think also, in all seriousness, I regret probably being that harsh on myself, caring too much about what people thought about me, because I think it held me back from doing a lot of things. I also used to suffer from really severe eczema, so I think it stopped me from kind of going out because I was worried about how people would look at my face and think it was hideous. When really, I think I should have just been kind of a bit more confident about me as a person, because I probably would have lived life a lot more. But I don't reflect too much on the past, because I think you learn from the past. I think life is short and you just need to keep going forward.
That was an incredible... Can you hear me?
Yes.
That was an incredible last question and some incredible answers. So please be thinking about your incredible and yet very snappy questions, and please give equally snappy answers, because we do have to relinquish this room full of joy and sisterhood in 10 minutes. So I'm going to deploy some positive action, which we are big fans of in Labour Women's Network, and give you 2 questions that we've had through the Facebook audience first. We'll have some quick answers to those. We had one from Iran, who asked, if you're thinking of standing for Parliament, how do you make a strategic choices about what sort of projects will increase your visibility and give you most chance? And one from Simon, who sadly used to be a Labour councillor, left partly due to experiences of misogyny and Islamophobia, and how can we improve the culture to retain councillors and other women in public life once we've got them in there. So I'll hand back to the panel to take those on, and then Aletha, if you want to take some snappy questions and answers, please. Thanks.
I think it's an issue that I think that we should all recognise. That it's one thing to kind of ask a woman to get involved, and then I do think that there needs to be ongoing mentoring, and we must not take it for granted. You know, we can't think that it kind of ends when someone gets elected. I think that a lot of people do need to be supported, and we need to be kind of do that in a tactful and supportive and sisterly way. And I think that, you know, there are people who we get in and we don't get as much out of them, and we lose so much. You know, the Labour movement loses so much, the public loses so much from these talented women who find hurdles and they don't really know how to get over them, and actually this needed some help and support. So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing was to how you raise your profile strategically if you wanted to be a member of Parliament.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think you have to look in the end as to kind of how do you become a member of Parliament, who makes that choice. On the whole, it's local party members. I think sometimes people think that they need to do something swanky, but actually it is up to local members to decide who they want to have as their member of Parliament. I think you should be raising your profile locally with your local members, and that's how it works.
I completely relate to the councillor question. I had a bit of a tough experience as a councillor, so we went from 1 black councillor to 6 out of 63. And I remember when I was going to stand to be a councillor, I had some people say that I shouldn't stand in the ward because it was predominantly white, and that I should think about going to another ward. And then there was a suggestion that I might want to anglicise my name, which I refused. In those days, my nickname was Abby, so I decided to go the full hog, Abena, Oppong-Asare. Not that I was trying to be a difficult person, but I just kind of wanted to make a stand, because I'd rather stand, be me, than try to be something different. And plus, the lecturers aren't stupid. They see on the piece of paper that I am a black woman. And at the end of the day, when I spoke to people, really, they just wanted to say, no, if I relate to them and speak about the issues that they were concerned about. So it didn't really make a difference because I got elected anyway. And then other challenges were people couldn't tell the difference between me and other black councillors. And there is a real issue of misogyny and sexism, particularly at local government. I do know that the LGA Labour Group have been looking at ways to address this. I also know that's part of the reason why I actually became involved in the Labour Women's Network and the Favourite Women's Network, because of my experiences. I think in a way it made me become very active, so you turn anger into action. That's one of my slogans. I think in a way it was a good experience. It was a bad experience, but it turned out to be a good experience for me, because I think it set me in terms of where I operate in Parliament, which can be quite similar. So you become quite resilient. And I know this is quite sad that you have to go through these kind of experiences, but I just think that it shouldn't really hold you back. It should energise you to kind of keep going if you can actually tolerate it, because there's nothing wrong with stepping back if you don't, because I did not really stand, but somehow I ended up standing to be a Parliament a year later. It's a long story, but I'll tell you another day. And then in terms of other things about standing for public office, I think that tips in terms of being able to stand, what would be useful is, obviously LWN, we do these training courses. Please do go and look at that. There are already a number of tips there. I think Claire's written some tips. You know, I've spoken to a lot of people, but I think you really got to think about your unique selling point, why you want to stand in public office. You need to think about what seat you want to go for. Don't try and go for every seat, because it maximises your chances by focusing on a particular area. And also you need to think about the seat that you're going for. What are the issues that members are concerned about? What is that you need to do to be able to attract their attention? And I'm going to be honest, I'm seeing a lot of candidates posting videos on social media and spending a lot of time on Twitter or doing websites. I personally feel that's not how the way you get your members. You need to think about your members, the type of people that you're targeting, because I'll see what you're posting on social media, but I'm not going to be able to vote for you. So you need to think strategically. You may see other people doing it and thinking that's what you need to do. You also need to think about who is there at the top glass ceiling that may be influencing the processes for your selection. So whether it's the union, whether it's speaking to your regional director, the more people that can advocate for you, the better. Don't think that you just submit your application and that's how you're going to get selected. The work starts well before that. You need to have the team of network behind you that helps you run your campaign, that gets the members to call for you, get your script, because it's going to happen really fast once the party opens up the selection process. And you've got to be, I'd say, resilient, because it can be quite toxic, and you need to think about it really carefully. You need to have a conversation with your family about whether, if you've got children, whether you want to put them in the public eye or not, because what you start with is what will take you through when you go through the selections. So I know I have a bit of talking.
For a couple of minutes for a few questions, we had our lady in the pink cardigan. That's you, yeah.
Hi, I'm Joanna. I'm a student. Hi, my name is Joanna. I'm a student at university, and something I've particularly noticed over my first year is that a lot of my fellow female students don't speak up in seminars, and oftentimes I know they know the answers and they're just not brave enough to speak. And I'd say the reason I'm happy to be quite so mouthy is because I went to an all-girls school and I had a lot of great female role models to look up to. So I was wondering what more you think we can do in education to really encourage like, the next generation of female leaders, because I know lots of cases of bright young women who just don't feel supported enough to speak up because they're so worried they'll be wrong. So yeah, just wondering what you think about that.
Is that to the entire panel?
Yes, yeah, sorry.
Just in the interest of time, I'm just going to say very briefly, I think it starts at the very, very beginning. I think parents speaking to their girls and their boys, and grandparents speaking to their grandchildren in the same way, and not differentiating, not expecting the girl to be quiet and play with certain types of toys and the boys. And at every single institution, every single relationships, if we don't tackle it everywhere, it seeps back in.
Hi, we just from the Labour campaign for mental health, and we just want to say thank you to Abena. We know you. Thank you everyone for and thank you to Claire and Nan and all the other sisters in the room. I mean, I was on a all-women shortlist with Angela Rayner back in the day. So thank you. We don't get anywhere without each other, and you know, Abena's new in a brief and she's smashing it already. So thank you from everyone at Labour Campaign for Mental Health. Thank you to Claire, thank you to Nan, and I'm going to pass it on. Thank you.
I'm Kelly, I'm from Bishop Auckland. I'm a delegate at Sandwich for Bishop Auckland. We need to get our Victoria MP out. But today I'm here as a woman and a mum of 4, and Emily was right, that 4th baby does make the difference. And mum of 3 boys, and then I got my princess. Yeah, she's the ruler, definitely. So yeah, good on the rulers of the world. But as a nurse of 20 years, after my 4th child, after 20 years of service, I went back and I've literally been treated like a second-class citizen. No rights. So I told them I could in 4 weeks. It's like, I'll just get a new job. If you can't accommodate my 4 children, I will get a new job. In 4 weeks, I got a new job. But they lost somebody with 15 years of trauma nursing experience and are happy to take on, well, just rape injury of their nurses, take injury of their nurses, which is unethical from a nursing point. Like, we've left Delhi with few nurses now. But from a point of view of, like, as a human, like, you've just disregarded my 15 years of experience and dedication and working around the system to fit my family into your program. But I wasn't going to do this time. My 4 babies come first. And like, where do women's rights start? In the biggest employer of Europe, why can't the NHS get it right? And the day I went back to work was really sickening, because the Tories, for probably the only good thing they did, was actually say that they, give women rights back, and that the employer should now take responsibility of flexible working. But it doesn't even work in the biggest employer of Europe. So where do we stand?
Hi, good evening. Councillor Nahi Dodds from Bracknell. I am here among our sisters, and I want you all to please celebrate Mary Templeton sitting right at the front. She's been elected as the leader of the House first time in 50 years history of Bracknell. Next to her is sitting Tamara Wright, and she is 18 years old councillor, just elected in Bracknell as well. And I am not only the councillor but also the mayor of Bracknell, first Muslim Pakistani elected in a very British area, and I'm very proud of my constituency and all the people who voted for me. But going back and listening to all your conversation, I want to tell you one little story. Before I was elected, I am a license holder within Bracknell Council. I went to attend a committee meeting where it was ruled by the Conservative Party at that time. I arrived at the desk very nicely dressed, and the person sitting at the desk asked me, "Oh, you are the cleaning lady." And I said, "Darling, this council can't afford me." I have never told this story because I often like to rise above these kind of things. And the second thing I'll tell you, there was talk about misogyny, and my colleagues will tell you this. We defeated the Conservatives, they are in a shock, they are actually having fits. And when I became the mayor, one of them actually pulled my chains on my shoulder, on my neck. So that just shows you the kind of hatred they have for not only women but ethnic minorities. But it's not even about that. It's about us being women rising above all that. And thank you very much for listening to me.
I'm so sorry to cut short these amazing contributions, but we do have to relinquish the room at 8. Can I ask for one closing summary from each of the panelists, including Aletha, how you felt listening to this tonight? And then if we could make ourselves out of the room in an orderly fashion, but please do join Labour Women's Network, and if you would like to buy one of our amazing vintage Labour posters, Jane will be happy to sell you one, but we need to clear the room, unfortunately. So thank you so much for coming. Don't go yet, wait for the 10 seconds each concluding remarks, but thank you for the support and have a brilliant night.
If you're not a member of the Labour Women's Network, join and let's help make the movement grow.
Fun and purpose. Just the fun in this audience has been phenomenal, as is the purpose.
Do not be shy, do not be afraid, do not silence yourself. Go and speak in regard to what you want to do.
Thank you so much to the ABI for making this possible. Thank you for our incredible panel. Thank you to our incredible audience online and in real life. And thank you to the LWN team, Jane, Kat, Sean, Serena, Nan, for helping to make this happen and the rest of our conference presence. Go forth in sisterhood. Good night.